We'll be tearing it up.
We'll be scoping the expo to bring you back the best of the best.
Some scoops.
There's always someone that releases something
that
pretty
drops
cool.
a bomb.
Yeah, people drop bombs. Like people.
Do they wait for these conferences to do it? Do you reckon?
100% they do. Yeah,
nice.
There's big bombs. Yeah. Like this is where they drop things. Like we know our supply.
Product bombs. We're talking about.
Product bomb. Not actual bombs. Product bombs. Yeah. Welcome, Dan.
Welcome. Monday morning, Jay.
Monday morning.
How are you? How was your weekend?
It was good.
Good.
Actually,
good.
I was a bit sick on the weekend.
Crook, weren't you?
Yeah, I'm always the biggest fan of hurling abuse at people that have stomach bugs. I don't hurl abuse, but
they're all fake, don't you?
Oh, I think they're fake. I haven't had one in 10 years.
Yeah?
On the weekend, man, I got shot down by a stomach bug. I don't know where it was from, but a good 14, 16 hours, I was wrecked.
Hit you for 6, eh?
Unreal.
Happy to be back here, mate. We had some great traction on podcast number 1 over the weekend. So we're here for number 2, and we've got a great question from Renim. So we want to answer that here today. Can Enphase micro-inverters, 10.36 kilowatt, support a 2-phase home? My home runs on a 3-phase electronic meter, but it's actually a 2-phase system. I need to ensure that 10 kilowatts will mean 10 kilowatts and not limited to 5 kilowatts as per a single-phase home.
Thanks, a good question.
Yeah.
Renim, mate, thank you.
Awesome.
And thank you for listening to our first podcast. And thank you to everyone who did listen to our first podcast. Wrapped, to say the least, at the response that we got from it.
We'll keep them coming.
We'll keep them coming thick and fast
every
week. So Renim, great question. I've done a little bit of research into the proposals that we've actually built for you. So fortunately for me, I've got some healthy data, and fortunately for you guys as well. And we've already done your permission to connect. So I've crossed out the important details there, but we've already got a permission to connect from Endeavour Energy, who's your DNSP, with the full export capacity. And the reason for that is that you have a 2-phase home. It's quite unique. So for those listening, typically most of our clients have either a 3-phase home or a single-phase home. So single-phase being one line in of 230 volts. 3-phase, typically we call it 400 volts, and that's a phase-to-phase measurement, and it's 3 lines in of 230. 2-phase, really, really unique. We don't actually come across it often, and for that reason, inverter manufacturers don't actually make 2-phase inverters. Like if you use a string inverter, SMA, Fronius, SolarEdge, whatever it might be, you can only buy a single-phase option or a 3-phase option. So with those manufacturers, you don't really have a good 2-phase option. If you were to do a 10 kilowatt system, you would bolt up like 2 single-phase inverters. Fronius have a good single-phase 8.2 kilowatt inverter that you could use on a home like that, but it would still, if it was a single-phase inverter, I would think it would still need to be export limited to 5 kilowatts because it's kilowatts exported per phase. Fortunately, with Enphase, coincidentally what we use for many good reasons, we can give you a true 2-phase system. So you would have, I think, 28 panels. You're going to have something like 14 on each phase, 14 panels on each phase, and it's a total 10.36 kilowatts with the inverter capacity of 9.7 kilowatts, split evenly across the 2 phases. So there will be no export limit on that system. That system can run at 5 kilowatts export limit per phase. Right up until we get to 3-phase. So it's a great scenario for Enphase. It's another reason, it's another area where Enphase trumps the competition. It'll be a 3-phase relay. Like we kind of set the system up like a 3-phase system, but we turn off one of the phases. So 3-phase relay, like Q relay. The Envoy will be wired up in 2-phase, and your network meter, your smart meter will be a 3-phase meter, but they just won't use one of the phases in the meter. So it is closer to a 3-phase system than it is a single phase system.
I mean, is it feasible? Like this, my background is is not electrical, but is it feasible if he ever upgraded to 3-phase that it wouldn't really affect, like how would that affect his current system?
Yeah, great question.
Is there any need for him to upgrade to three-phase?
Well, for Renim's house, we're kind of maxing the roof space. He's got a little bit more roof space we can use. I think off the top of my head, maybe another 5 or so kilowatts we could get on. So in the future, if he decides to bolt up a battery and go electric vehicle, things like that. For a two-phase house, may not be economical because if you put on battery storage, the export limit will be less important. Plus, he's a really good east-west split. So he's going to generate reasonably strong in the morning. He's got great afternoon generation, and the extra roof space that he's got is fairly flat. So it's not like it's all on the north face or all on the east or all on the west. He's got a good split of tilt and orientations, which means he doesn't have a high peak generation. It's spread out over all day.
Gotcha.
Now, people with like an east-west split, export limit doesn't affect as much those guys. It still does play a part, and depending on your system and your usage habits. For Renim, if he was to add on an extra 5 kilowatts or so, I probably still wouldn't recommending upgrade to three-phase. It's, you'd probably be better putting that money into battery storage, to be honest.
Yes.
However, with clients that are single phase, like for us, if you do single phase, we do maximum of 33 panels on single phase, which is something, what is that? It's like 13 kilowatts or so, maybe 12 kilowatts, 33 panels. And the reason for that is just what Enphase will kind of support. It's 3 branches of 11 panels, which is how we wire these panels. And we would export that on single phase to 5 kilowatts. So for that to be worth it, like you might think, why would you put 12 or 13 kilowatts worth of panels on a roof and export it to 5? That sounds crazy. People that have high daytime consumption, or because what an export limit will do, to give everyone an idea of what an export limit is, it's how much can you sell back to the grid or put back into the grid at any given time. So it's an instantaneous figure. It's not like 5 kilowatt hours for the whole day. It's 5 kilowatts at any given time. So if your system, for example, is producing 10 kilowatts, you're using 5 inside the home, and you can sell 5 to the grid. That means your system would work perfectly. But if you're only using 1 kilowatt in the home and your system wants to produce 10, but you're only allowed to sell 5 to the grid, your system would actually ramp down to 6 kilowatts worth of generation, unless you were using more in the home, and then the system would ramp up to suit what you're using, like the demand. It's like a live switch, and it has the power to ramp your system up and down. So clients with like pools on during the day, they charge their EV. Battery storage is great because battery storage to a solar system, like it's just a load. It's just a load. And it will take up to, Powerwall 13.5, 14 kilowatt hours worth of load, with some sort of design limitations around that, of course, like it will only take 5 kilowatts at once. They're good scenarios for a really big oversized single phase system. But when you get up around, if people have like $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 power bills and they're on single phase, if their roof allows them to put on more than that sort of 10 kilowatt mark, we would sometimes recommend, depending on their situation, a 3-phase upgrade. Now, a 3-phase upgrade, and we personally don't do them. We have a really great electrical contractor, Resolec Electrical. So shout out to Brett and the team at Resolec. They do our 3-phase upgrades for us. We connect you guys straight with them, and they look after it. Great local company. They do a lot of work for Endeavour Energy. Very well respected.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we recommend you speak to them. Now, the thing is with a 3-phase upgrade is the price of it wildly, depends on the situation. It swings. You can get a 3-phase upgrade from, let's say $2,500 all the way through to like 10 grand. It depends on, whether you have underground or overhead is one of the big differentiators. If you've got like a 100-meter underground run and you got a trench and you got to lay new conduits, like it's going to be pretty pricey, in which case sometimes it's not worth doing. If you've got an overhead connection and it's like residential, so say overhead from house to pole, 30, 40 meters or less, you're pretty safe to say that you're going to be getting away with it for sort of less than 5K. I've seen them as cost effective as $3,000 when it's like a 20-meter run to the house. Really depends on your consumer's mains as well. If your consumer's mains are a short run. So to give you guys an idea, like service mains are from your pole to your point of attachment on your house.
Yep.
Consumers mains from point of attachment down to your meter or your service fuses.
Yep.
So it depends on the route of those. If it's accessible, if it's not, you might have to pull new ones in. You may not.
Yep.
So yeah, it's kind of a really how long's a piece of string type scenario.
Yep.
You really do need a face-to-face proposal built for a 3-phase upgrade.
Gotcha.
But sometimes it's worth it, and if you've got long-term vision of where you live, and you're going to be there for 5 years plus, you would be worth looking down the avenue of a 3-phase upgrade if you're on a single-phase home.
Yeah, gotcha. Just a quick question back on that throttling down of the system for a sec. So that's all done by the inverter, Enphase. The micros figure that out, which panels or what to throttle down to stick to that 5 kilowatt limit.
Yes.
Yep.
So we actually have, when we set up and commission our systems, we put a grid profile on there. So a grid profile is specific to us in Endeavour Energy or Ausgrid region. And we would say, hey, this system is not export limited and it's installed in Endeavour Energy area. It automatically uploads the parameters. So minimum, maximum frequency, minimum, maximum voltage. And it's like, it's not just one setting. It's like hundreds of settings. It's like in these conditions, the inverter reacts this way.
Gotcha.
What does it do? It's like algorithms in the back end. And most inverters now do have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So when we commission it, we set those settings and we would tell the inverter, hey, this site is single phase and it's export limited to 5 kilowatts. So the Envoy would communicate with the micro-inverters and ramp the micro-inverters up or down depending on the total export and import of the site. Gotcha. So if you do have a site where you have export limitations, this means you must have consumption monitoring. Mm-hmm. So if you have like a string inverter, for example, you must have their private energy meter, so their own smart meter or consumption monitoring. Yep. With Enphase, that's included in every Enphase system. The Envoy has consumption monitoring. With most other systems, it's a bolt-on attachment, but you must have it. You don't have a choice.
Gotcha.
Yeah. There are other ways that systems can be tapped into and limited, which is probably a whole nother conversation.
Yep.
Like it from the grid, from the network, they're trying to get more and more control over solar systems and control them, as the grid needs to support the grid. But that whole other topic of conversation.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the export limit on 3-phase. So what are we looking at there?
Yeah. So residentially, we can have on residential up to 30 kilowatts of inverter, and we can export, depending on the scenario, up to 30 kilowatts as well, residentially. There is sometimes we do get permissions to connects that do come back with an export limit on them. Generally, we work that out ourselves. So there is a whole other thing called voltage rise, which is another topic of discussion again. And when we might want to put a bigger system on a property, but they might have a really long run to the street. So we know that solar system can't actually produce more than what the voltage rise calculations will let us have. So voltage rise is made up of basically your inverter size, simple calculation, for the length of your mains back to the street by the cable size back to the street. So that's a calculation, and that in itself can dictate your export limit. So not only what the grid can handle, but what you can actually put into the grid without making the voltage rise more than 2% total or 1% per leg. Yeah.
Gotcha. So like, with 3-phase, like it's a massive jump in improvement from a 5 kilowatt single phase to 30 on 3. Like why are you so low on single and not like 15 on 3?
That's a good question, Dan.
Like why?
Balance.
Yeah.
Balance is the reason.
Right.
Endeavour don't want, and all DNSPs don't want the grid imbalanced. Right. Yep. When for those who don't know, I did my apprenticeship at Endeavour Energy. Yep. And I still remember like the connection structure. So house number 1 was connected on A phase, number 2 B phase, number 3 C phase, 4 A phase, 5, and so on and so forth, right? It's all about balance, getting the grid as evenly loaded as possible. Gotcha. So when we have a 3-phase solar system, we know that we've got balance going into the street because the 3-phase solar system produces fairly evenly. So you would have the same amount of energy per phase going back into the street versus single phase where it can be heavily loaded on one phase. So it is about balance and ultimately maintaining the quality and stability of the grid, which is why it's like that.
Yeah. So that there's not these crazy peaks like per
like phase. Because you can really like, and we do have an issue at the moment. Well, the grid has an issue, which is kind of our issue of instability. You know, like we more and more now we turn on systems and the grid voltage is so high that we actually have to get Endeavour Energy. We have one of the design beautiful ladies at Endeavour Penrith, Melissa Beer. She's awfully helpful to us. So shout out to Melissa if you watch it. She's great. You know, she goes around and she'll do grid studies for us. And if the voltage is sort of too high on the grid end, then Endeavour will ultimately tap up the transformer, which turns down the voltage. So there is that sort of flexibility in the grid, but they're not dynamic. Like they don't just change. They're not electronic. They're not smart like you would think they probably are. At a local area, it's actually a manual setting to go out there and change it. So like the grid voltage is 230 per phase. It can be -6% and +10% off the top of my head. It's got to be within those parameters, but we're sort of seeing we're seeing sometimes like way more than +10%. You know, sometimes we've come across at like 260, 270 volts, and the reason for that is because of solar. Like it's not. There's actually nothing else doing it to the grid other than solar. It's the excess of generation. So it's having so much energy that's not being used and being pushed back into the grid is what raises the grid voltage. And the only solution I see to that is battery storage. It's got to be battery storage.
That was my next question. Like, it seems like the battery provides a great potential like solution just for, I guess safety in a way. I don't know, probably the wrong word, but for like dumping that crazy peak.
Think about it
excess.
Like this, right? All of Western Sydney right now, except the Greenies, are on about raising the dam wall. Battery storage is the extra 10% of the dam wall being raised. It's going to capture that water and stop flooding. Flooding being the grid. Voltage rises the grid, know. And when we have a mass flood, it's like a mass grid outage. Battery storage has the potential to soak that extra water, that extra energy. Is exactly what it's like. It's just a giant dampener.
Gotcha. Like, do you think you have substations, you would have substations of batteries potentially?
Absolutely. Hell
like,
yeah.
Has that been trialled anywhere on a smaller scale than like Adelaide, for example?
It's a good question.
Or is Adelaide the size you need to make it feasible?
Well, I don't think so. Like Tesla have VPPs. They've just last week launched their VPP in New South Wales and Victoria off the top of my head, maybe ACT. They are aiming to do that with Powerwalls decentralized. So it will take on energy, when it needs to, and they will discharge your battery when they need to as well. So they've done it on a mass scale, Hornsdale big battery, which is paid itself off, I believe, in terms of outage costs to South Australia. It's really performed very, very well.
Crazy,
I think it silenced a lot of critics. That's for sure. So it's performing well, and they've proven it can be done on utility scale. And it will be done on housing scale as well. Like homes, next door neighbors. When people bolt on Powerwall, Powerwall or Tesla building this virtual power plant will be able they'll be able to be that dampener or all that buffer from the grid. The thing with it is though, Dan, with VPPs and things, you lose an element of control on your system. Right now it's attractive to be in it because Tesla give you a bit of money off on your battery, like $1,000 in energy bill credits. People buy battery and solar for all sorts of different reasons. VPP is a very communal kind of way to do it. Like you're looking out for other people, but you kind of lose the fact that it's yours. Like it's not just your energy. See, for me, if I was to look at my, my Tesla app and see that they drain some energy out of my battery, like, yes, you do get remunerated for it. Yeah, it's a bit of a catch-22
Yeah,
because
it's mine.
it's mine. That's my goddamn energy. I put
That's
them
it.
panels on. You
Yeah.
know, that's my
Yeah.
locally harvested
That's
electrons. Like, get your own roof space. I don't know, man. Look, it's coming though, whether we like it or not, and it's something that we'll have to adapt with.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm planning on sitting in at on the VPP sessions at the Smart Energy Conference this week to further educate myself on it. I think I can get pretty wrapped up in what we're doing here, and it's important for me to continue my education around that space.
Absolutely.
We'll keep you posted.
Virtual power plant, right?
Virtual power plant. That's
Thank
right.
You. For the dummies at home. Yeah.
For
like me.
For those at home, like me as well. Yeah. So that's coming. That's definitely coming.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh well, thanks. That was a good chat about single phase batteries and two phase. Yeah.
No stress.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right, Dan, let's wrap it up.
Pumped.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. We hope you enjoy your week. Enjoy the sunshine in Sydney while it's here this week. We are aiming to install somewhere between 35 to 40 systems this week. So 40 steps closer to net zero by 2050. Bring it on. Awesome. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.